through Thursday. Fair weather cloud will bubble up at times through the day, and the sunshine may be turning a bit hazier down towards the southwest. I think through the afternoon we may see a bit more cloud developing across the central part of England and Wales, but for most of us, once again, it is set fair. Those temperatures doing pretty well for the time of year, but notice that easterly breeze developing along those eastern coasts, and that is going to make it feel colder here, and we could see some low cloud drifting in at times too. More especially then as we go through Thursday night and into Friday, more of this low misty cloud pushing its way in off the North Sea. Those easterly winds strengthening, so more of us will see cloud as we head through Friday, especially across eastern and southern parts. I'll see you soon. Take care.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to PMQs Live with me, Gloria De Piero. In just a few moments, we'll be going live to the Commons for Prime Minister's questions. It's the first since Easter recess and since Boris Johnson was fined for breaking lockdown law. And we'll be going through the post-match analysis with my fantastic panel of politicians. Today, it's Conservative MP Peter Bone and Labour MP John Cryer. And let me know what you make of today's PMQs. Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me @gbnews. Gentlemen, welcome back. It is good to see you both. If you had a Prime Minister's question today, what would you be asking?
I'll give you two. The third question on the order paper is about my local hospital, and that's a really important question. But if on a national issue, I would ask whether we were going to provide offensive weapons to Ukraine, like the President has asked for, because we're providing defensive weapons at the moment. I think there's a strong case to give them offensive weapons, because they, at one stage, have got to try and drive the Russians back out of their country.
What do you think the Prime Minister would say to that second point?
It's one of those questions I actually ask because I don't know the answer, and it would be very interesting to see what the Prime Minister said.
And what's the issue with your local hospital, Peter?
Red tape. £46 million was promised for the hospital in 2019. We're in
3 years.
3 years, and it is entirely red tape. Someone's got to cut through the red tape and build it. I mean, it's a massive redevelopment. It's the first stage of it. OK. John, you're on your feet, you're on those green benches. What are you going to ask the Prime Minister today?
Actually, I've got almost exactly the same problem in my local hospital as Peter's got, Witch Cross, which is one of the major hospitals in East London. So I'd be tempted to ask that. because that's an issue that's been going on for months.
What, money being promised but not getting through?
The number of hospital, if you remember, the Prime Minister a couple of years ago said we were going to get, I think, 40 new hospitals.
Yes.
Then it came down to 6. Now we're being told 6 hospital reconfigurations. One of them happens to be Whipps Cross in my constituency. They've already started demolition work, but the money's not come through.
Right.
Now, why it hasn't, you know, your guess is as good as mine, frankly. But on national issues, I would probably go with something along the lines of if the Prime Minister's so confident that he's not behaved badly, he's not contravened, he's not broken the law and he's behaved properly, why is he resisting referring it to the Privileges Committee, the inquiry into his behaviour?
Peter, over to you for that particular point. Why wouldn't he just refer himself to the Privileges Committee? It's majority Tory controlled anyway.
Yeah, but the chairman, as you know, has prejudged the issue. Chris Bryant has, so I think that would be one reason. Look, the issue of contempt is a very specific thing, and I don't think that threshold could ever be proved by the Privilege Committee. But what I think what we do need, John, is to get the Sue Gray report after the police investigations, debate that and decide on that issue, because at the moment, the issue of whether the Prime Minister deliberately lied to Parliament, I don't think you can prove that he deliberately lied to Parliament. I don't think he did, but I don't think there's any way that any committee could actually say that happened.
And that was the question that you posed to your leader yesterday. Did you deliberately mislead the House? He said no, so you just take him at his word?
Yes, and how would you prove anyway that that wasn't the case? The last time this was tried was with Stephen Byers in 2005, and there was much more circumstantial evidence that he had deliberately lied, but the committee didn't find it.
But, I mean, the problem is a committee in Parliament, a select committee like Chris Bryant's committee, Privileges, it's not a high court, it's not a court of law. It's not there to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, but it's got to be investigated. You know, I think most people find it extraordinary that the Prime Minister said in December, well, all the rules were followed, all the guidance was followed, and then we find that the opposite was the case. It's very difficult to defend his position, although he obviously hasn't got a difficulty defending it.
No, well, hang on. I think, John, slightly. I think what the Prime Minister said, he had been told there were no parties at Downing Street. And of course, Downing Street is like a massive office block in reality. And the Prime Minister is whizzing around all over the world and working night and day to get us through COVID. So I think there is a legitimate argument on that, and I absolutely accept it. But I do think once you get Sue Gray's report, and she's looked into the whole thing independently, and the Prime Minister has promised that we will debate that and when it comes, I would, if I'd been in the opposition, I'd have waited till then. If Sue Gray's report seemed to show that something very bad had happened, then I would have tried to refer it to Privilege. I think this is a political move before the local elections. I think it was politically motivated. It was asked before the Prime Minister had even made the statement in the House. That must be politically motivated.
Will you vote tomorrow in that vote on whether to refer, whether to have an investigation, the independent investigation?
Well, I hope to speak in that debate tomorrow. My view is that I will oppose the motion, though I haven't even seen the motion yet, to be fair. And, of course, I will listen to the debate, as always. And if I did think there was a reason to vote for it, I would. At the moment, all the research I've done and everything I looked at says, no, I'm not going to vote for such a motion.
You know, the Prime Minister, he has apologised many times now. What's he apologising for?
Well, the simple thing was he'd followed the ministerial code properly. He thought he had done nothing wrong when he walked into the Cabinet Office and was surprised by people giving him a... Were they cheering my comment there? No. With his plastic Marks and Spencer's case in a Tupperware thing, and lasted 9 minutes. He didn't think that was a party, and I don't think it was a party either. But he may have broken the law.
Fields consistent
John,
with meeting our climate change commitments during the transition.
That you are the Labour Party and the opposition parties generally are talking about this
and that is not going to happen overnight. He will also know that we've set out in our domestic energy security strategy that future licensing rounds will have to be compatible with the climate compatibility checkpoint, which will be set out shortly.
Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, I would like to point out
School in the 70s, maybe we had something similar then.
Hold that thought. The Prime Minister is on his feet.
We now come to questions to the Prime Minister. Dr. Neil Hudson.
Question 1, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I know the whole House will want to join me in wishing Her Majesty the Queen a very happy birthday for tomorrow. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today. I will then be travelling to India to deepen the strategic trade, defence and people-to-people ties between our two countries, building on India's involvement in the Carbis Bay G7 summit. I'll be seeing Prime Minister Modi in Delhi, meeting Indian business people investing in the UK and visiting British investments in India.
Dr. Neil Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Challenges with rural transport remain some of the greatest obstacles facing people in Penrith and the border, and I was pleased last year to see, on top of the government's £3 billion national bus strategy helping areas like Cumbria, that Cumbria County Council received an additional £1.5 million to enhance provision as part of the Rural Mobility Fund. But I'm sure my right honourable friend can only imagine my disappointment this month when Cumbria was allocated no funding from the latest tranche of bus funding. Can the Prime Minister reassure my constituents that Cumbria can look forward to future funding schemes to improve our vital rural bus services?
Prime Minister.
Okay, Mike, I thank my honourable friend. He is a great champion for rural Cumbria and for bus services, and he's right that Cumbria got another £1.5 million. We do, for buses, we do want to put more into buses. I believe in them passionately myself, and I will make sure that he has a meeting with the relevant minister.
We now come to the Leader of the Opposition, Keir Starmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister in wishing Her Majesty a happy birthday? Why did the Prime Minister's Press Secretary, Allegra Stratton, have to resign from her job?
Minister.
Sorry. I bitterly regret Allegra's resignation. I think it was very sad, and I think she did an outstanding job. But I do, particularly since she was the one who coined the expression coal, cars, cash and trees, which enabled the UK to deliver a fantastic COP26 summit last year.
Keir Starmer.
Allegra Stratton laughed at breaking the rules. She resigned. The Prime Minister then claimed he was furious at her behaviour and accepted her resignation. Professor Neil Ferguson broke the rules. He also resigned. The Prime Minister said that was the right thing to do. The former Health Secretary broke the rules. He too resigned. The Prime Minister tried to claim he sacked him. Why does the Prime Minister think everybody else's actions have consequences except his own?
I thank the right honourable gentleman. I feel he's in some kind of Doctor Who time warp. We had this conversation yesterday, Mr. Speaker, and I've explained why I bitterly regret receiving an FPN. I apologise to the House, but he asks about the actions for which I take responsibility, and I'll tell him we're going to get on with delivering for the British people, making sure that we power out of the problems that COVID has left us, and more people in work than there were before the pandemic, Mr. Speaker, fixing our energy problems and leading the world in standing up to the aggression of Vladimir Putin. Those are all subjects about which I think he could reasonably ask questions now.
These are strange answers from a man who yesterday claimed to be making a humble apology. Does the Prime Minister actually accept that he broke the law?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I've been absolutely clear that I humbly accept what the police have said. I've paid the fixed penalty notice. And, Mr. Speaker, what I think the country and what I think the whole House would really rather do is get on with the things for which we were elected, deliver on our promises to the British people. And you could not have clearer evidence of the intellectual bankruptcy of Labour. They have no plans, they
have no plans for energy. They have no plans for social care, and they have no plans, Mr. Speaker, to fix the economy.
Prime Minister, sit down. I want to hear what you've got to say, but I can't hear when you're talking that way. I'm here in the chair. Please, if you can help me. No, I think we'll have had enough.
The state of it, the party of Peel and Churchill reduced to shouting and screaming in defence of this lawbreaker.
Now then, that's the last time. That Peroni that you just asked about, you might have to go and take it. I don't hear any more, or else you will be drinking. Keir Starmer.
So, Mr. Speaker, yesterday's apology lasted for as long as the Prime Minister thought necessary to be clipped for the news. But once the cameras were off, the Prime Minister went to see his backbenchers, and he was back to blaming everyone else. He even said that the Archbishop of Canterbury had not been critical enough of Putin. In fact, the Archbishop called Putin's war an act of great evil, and the Church of England has led the way in providing refuge to those fleeing. Would the Prime Minister like to take this opportunity to apologise for slandering the Archbishop and the Church of England?
Mr. Speaker, I think the right honourable gentleman. I was slightly taken aback to be Sorry, Mr. Speaker. I was slightly taken aback for the government to be criticised over the policy that we have devised to end the deaths at sea in the Channel as a result of cruel criminal gangs. I was surprised that we were attacked for that. And actually, Mr. Speaker, it turns out that policy, do you know who proposed that policy, first of all, in 2004? It was David Blunkett, Mr. Speaker, who said it was a 21st, yes it was, and she'll remember, a 21st century solution to the problems of illegal asylum seeking and immigration. He should stick with, he's a Corbynister in a smart Islington suit. That's the truth.
I think you'll find Mr. Corbyn doesn't have the whip. But I think that's a no then. Pathetic. He never takes responsibility for his words or action. They were all there. The Prime Minister also accused the BBC of not being critical enough of Putin. Would the Prime Minister have the guts to say that to the face of Clive Myrie, Lise Doucet and Steve Rosenberg, who have all risked their lives day in, day out on the front line in Russia and Ukraine, uncovering Putin's barbarism?
If the right honourable gentleman wants to join the Conservative Party and come and listen to the meetings of the Conservative Party, he's welcome to do it. But as I say, I think he's a Corbynister in an Islington suit. But I said nothing of the kind, and I have the highest admiration as a journalist and a former journalist for what journalists do. I think they do an outstanding. I mean, I think he should withdraw what he just said. It has absolutely no basis or foundation in truth.
Keir Starmer.
That's how he operates. A merely mouthed apology when the cameras roll, a vicious attack on those who tell the truth as soon as the cameras are off. Slander decent people in a private room. Let the slander spread without the backbone to repeat it in public. How can the Prime Minister claim to be a patriot when he deliberately attacks and degrades the institutions of our great country?
Prime Minister! How many does he have? Mr. Speaker. Sorry, Mr. Speaker.
No, Prime Minister, just a second. I want to hear the Prime Minister's answers. I expect it both ways. Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, it is an indication of the depths to which he's willing to sink. That he accuses me of traducing journalists. What he says what he says is completely without any foundation whatever. I did not attack the BBC last night. For their coverage of Ukraine, he must be out of his tiny mind, Mr. Speaker. He must be out of his tiny mind. I said no such thing, and there are people behind who will testify to that. He is completely wrong, Mr. Speaker. That is the limit. That is the limit of his willingness to ask sensible questions today. We are getting on. This government is getting on with the serious problems that require attention. Fixing our energy supply issues, and by the way, undoing the damage of the Labour government that didn't invest in nuclear power for 13 years. We're the nuclear power station every year. Standing up to Putin, Mr. Speaker, when he would have elected a Putin apologist. That's what he wanted to do, and he campaigned to do that. Mr. Speaker, and fixing our economy with record numbers of people now in work, productivity back above what it was, more than 500,000 people back on the payroll than there were before the pandemic began, Mr. Speaker. That is as a result of the decisions, the tough calls this government has made. We get on with the job while they flip-flop around like beached flounders on the beach, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Founded in Hitchin by an inspirational man called Richard Lucas, the GoVox mental well-being platform was started in 2018 following the sad loss of some local young men to suicide. Since then, working with brilliant partners like NHSX, King's College London and others, the technology platform and support services have grown to support the mental well-being and mental health of over 40,000 young people in over 10 countries. Today, GoVox is launching its campaign to offer its services free to over 1,000 state secondary schools. Would the Prime Minister welcome this initiative, perhaps go to Hitchin and meet the people from GoVox? And secondly, could he set out what more we can do to help young people and young men with the problems of mental health and mental well-being?
Prime Minister.
Yeah. I thank him very much. I thank my honourable friend. I'm very pleased to hear about the work that GoVox is doing to support mental health and well-being, and we're putting more money into mental health care support, an extra £2.3 billion a year in the next financial year, which of course we can supply thanks to the decisions taken by this government, which actually that party opposed.
We now come to the leader of the SNP, Ian Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I join the Prime Minister and Leader of the Opposition in wishing Her Majesty the Queen best wishes for her birthday tomorrow? Mr. Speaker, last night the Prime Minister might have convinced his backbenchers and his spineless Scottish Tories to keep him in place for another few weeks. But the public aren't so easily fooled. 82% of people in Scotland said they believe the Prime Minister lied to this Parliament and to the public about his law-breaking COVID parties. Are they right? Or should they not believe their lying eyes?
Prime Minister.
I thank the right honourable gentleman. We had a long conversation about this yesterday. I understand the point of his question, but we are going to get on with the job of delivering for the people of the whole of the United Kingdom.
If the Prime Minister wants to get on, he should be offering his resignation to the Queen before her birthday. Mr. Speaker, no government can be led by a Prime Minister who's in a constant state of crisis to save his own skin. And what's worse, the UK government is now led by a tag team of scandal, a Prime Minister who can't be trusted with the truth, and a Chancellor who can't be trusted with his taxes. Everyone knows that this Prime Minister is now on borrowed time until the Tory backbenchers count the cost of their council election defeat. But in the meantime, families are counting the cost of a Tory-made cost of living crisis every day. After yesterday's farce, isn't it finally the time for him to accept that neither his party or the public can afford to keep him around as Prime Minister for 1 minute longer?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, if that were true, then I don't think he'd be calling for my resignation. That's what we're going to do is get on with the job in hand, and that is deliver for the entire people of this country. And by the way, Mr. Speaker, he hasn't answered the point I made yesterday, which is I think is still incredible that at a time when we need to stand up to aggression from Vladimir Putin, it is still the policy of the Scottish Nationalist Party to get rid of this country's unilateral defence.
We have a closed question, Philip Holloway.
Number 3, sir.
I thank my honourable friend. He's an excellent champion for Kettering, and we're fully committed to the delivery of the new hospital for Kettering. The release of funding will be subject to the usual business case assessment process.
The redevelopment of Kettering General Hospital is the #1 local priority for residents in Kettering and across North Northamptonshire. Would my right honourable friend be kind enough, please, to facilitate a meeting with the Health Secretary for the 3 members for Kettering, Wellingborough, Corby, together with the Hospital Chief Executive, so that we can trigger the start of the drawdown of the initial £46 million worth of funding?
Yes. Prime Minister.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, my right honourable friend, the Health Secretary, told me that he's met them before and he's happy to meet them again.
Liz Saville-Roberts.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Efarydd. Plaid Cymru have been calling for 15 years for a law to ban politicians from being willfully misleading. New polling by Compassion in Politics shows that 73% of people support such a law. Will the Prime Minister support a lying in politics bill?
Mr. Speaker, it is well known that the rules of this House demand that we tell the truth in this House, and that's what we all try to do.
Nick Fletcher.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. PMQs for a constituency MP like me is a wonderful opportunity to ask the Prime Minister for a new hospital for Doncaster, maybe. Or maybe for Doncaster to be the home of Great British Rail headquarters. Sadly, Mr. Speaker, there is a more pressing issue, and that is that men are dying so much younger than they should. So will the Prime Minister meet with me to discuss the merits of having a Minister for Men and the benefits of a men's health strategy? That way, the next time I am fortunate enough to get a PMQ, I can lobby the Prime Minister for a new hospital for Doncaster and for Doncaster to be the home of Great British Rail headquarters.
Prime Minister.
I thank my friend, honourable friend, very much for his work in this area. And we are determined to tackle all the health conditions that he's describes and cares about, particularly mental health and suicide prevention. And I note his plea for a new hospital. I know it's one that's shared by many colleagues on these benches. This is the government that is funding that, making it possible, thanks to the decisions we've taken, allowing our economy to grow, which would not have been possible if we'd listened to them, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On this side, not only do we believe that lawbreakers can't be lawmakers, but also that tax raisers should be taxpayers. And when people in powerful positions pick and choose where they pay their taxes, that's an insult to everyone else who doesn't have that luxury. So can I ask the Prime Minister, how many members of his cabinet have ever been involved in a tax avoidance scheme?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, what we try to do in this government is cut taxes for the whole country, and I'm proud to say that what the Chancellor did in the recent spring statement by lifting the threshold for national insurance contributions was to have a tax cut for about £330 for most people in this country. That's a fantastic thing.
Sarah Atherton.
Mr. Speaker, if you live in North Wales and want to watch international sport, you have to travel 4 hours to Cardiff or Swansea.
Shocking.
The Wrexham Racecourse, with its historic cop stand, is home to Wembley-bound Wrexham Football Club. It's the oldest international stadium in the world and forms part of our Levelling Up Fund bid. Would the Prime Minister agree that round 2 of the Levelling Up Fund offers an excellent opportunity to level up access to sport?
Well, there could be no better campaigner for Wrexham and for the interests of Wrexham sport. I will do what I can, Mr. Speaker, but she'll know that 121 million from the first round of the Levelling Up Fund was awarded to Wales, and I'm sure that Wrexham has every chance of success in the future.
Christian Wakeford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister has been asked about sodium valproate scandal previously, but Sean Linton at the Sunday Times this weekend revealed that campaigners were blacklisted, including my constituent Emma Murphy, who is here in the gallery today. Advice from the Cumberledge report has been ignored, warnings are still not on medication as of a couple of weeks ago, and a redress scheme is still not forthcoming. Will the Prime Minister meet with me and campaigners like Emma to discuss what can be done to right this incredible wrong?
Prime Minister.
I thank you very much for raising the point. I understand that we've had a review already of the issue, but I'll make sure that he has a proper meeting, or he and the campaigners that he mentions have a proper meeting with the relevant minister in the Health Department.
Yeah. Robert Jenry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My constituent Aidan Aslin has served in the Ukrainian Armed Forces for 4 years. Last week, he was captured by the Russian army in Mariupol. Yesterday, a video emerged of my constituent handcuffed, physically injured, and being interviewed under duress for propaganda purposes. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that this is a flagrant breach of the Geneva Convention, that treating any prisoner of war in this manner is illegal, and that the interviewer, Graham Phillips, is in danger of prosecution for war crimes, and that any online platform, such as YouTube, which hosts propaganda videos of this kind, should take them down immediately?
I thank my right honourable friend very much, and I think everybody will want to will urge the Russian state to treat his constituent humanely and compassionately, because in my view, although we do not encourage people, in fact we actively dissuade people from going to that theatre of conflict, I understand that he'd been serving in the Ukrainian forces for some time, and his situation was very different from that of a mercenary, Mr. Speaker. I hope that he is treated with care and compassion. I thoroughly echo the sentiments that my right honourable friend has expressed about those who broadcast propaganda messages.
James Murray.
Mr. Speaker, this Conservative government is raising taxes on working people in the middle of a cost of living crisis. So can I press the Prime Minister on whether he agrees that it would add insult to injury if his Chancellor or any other government ministers were to benefit from overseas tax havens in their personal tax affairs?
Mr. Speaker. Good point, Mr. Speaker, but we are responsible for cutting taxes for everybody, which is what we're actually doing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Newcastle-under-Lyme is receiving over £50 million of government investment into our high street and the high street in Kidsgrove, in my honourable friend's neighbouring constituency. But it's all being overshadowed by the ongoing environmental disaster at Wally's Quarry. In January, the operator was hit by 3 Category 1 breaches by the Environment Agency. My constituents are utterly sick of it. It's been going on for far too long, Prime Minister. We need to see tougher enforcement. We need to see the permit taken away. What hope can you give my constituents? How can we stop the stink?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And my honourable friend has raised this issue before, and I know how infuriating it is for his constituents. That's why my right honourable friend, the Environment Secretary, has now ordered action against the site operator, and permanent capping will begin on site next month. I can tell him that will improve things for thousands of residents in his constituency, and if it is necessary to take further action to remove these malodorous vapours, Mr. Speaker, then we will.
Ruth Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With details of the Sougray report trickling out, a flood of photos of Partygate yet to be released, and any number of fixed penalty notices liable to be leaked, this is a Prime Minister that's not fit to run a bath, never mind this. It's time for him to stop this ridiculous charade that he believes no rules were broken. So will he commit to making public every fixed penalty notice he receives? Will he publish the party photos taken by the official photographer and ensure Sougray's report is published at the earliest opportunity? We have a right to know the truth.
Well, Mr. Speaker, on the my own fixed penalty notice, I've been transparent with the House. I apologise. On the rest of it, and will be, Mr. Speaker. But on the rest of it, I really think, as I've said before, that the House should wait to the conclusion of the investigation when Sue Gray will be finally reporting.
Sir John Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Long ago, in a far-off place, thousands of British servicemen sailed into what for them was the unknown as they witnessed the early tests of nuclear weapons. They've lived with the consequence of the service to our nation ever since. Following a PMQ from the Honourable Member for Salford, the Prime Minister has agreed to meet me and her and those veterans. But will he now assure the House that he will take personal charge of the decision on whether to grant the remaining servicemen, for there are few left, the service medal they so richly deserve?
Prime Minister.
I thank him very much. I thank my right honourable friend very much. I thank him for campaigning on this issue, which I know attracts support across the House, and I certainly will take personal charge of the matter myself and make sure that they receive the recognition they deserve.
Liz Twist.
Mr. Speaker, my constituents across Blaydon knew the rules and stuck to the rules. Nurses and teachers included. No after-work drinks for them. The Prime Minister set these rules. Night after night, he was on national TV to exhort us to stick to the rules for everyone's sake. Yet he continues to say that he doesn't think he broke any rules. My constituents are angry that while they stuck to the law, the Prime Minister broke it. Trust in his government is broken. So when will he go?
Mr. Speaker, I understand the feelings of her constituents, and I continue to express my apologies for the FPN that I received. But what the government is going to do is get on with tackling the issues that face this country and delivering for the British people, and that is my priority.
Robert Butlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of my constituents, like many others across our country, has been helping directly with the humanitarian effort in Ukraine and the region, and he received a most troubling message from a resident of the city of Kherson only days ago, and I quote from part of it: "There are no green corridors for evacuation. People are trying to flee the city at their own risk under fire. The Russians are living in our homes. They are plotting terror, robbing, harassing, kidnapping and killing our people, doing whatever they want." Mr. Speaker, what more can my right honourable friend and the international community do to ensure that Putin and those who do his bidding are brought to justice for their crimes?
Prime Minister.
Well, I think that my right honourable friend, is making an incredibly important point, because the savagery that the Russians are now unleashing on Ukraine clearly knows no limits and is clearly authorised from the very top. And she asked what more we can do. I think what we need to do is make it clear to serving officers now in the Russian forces that they will, if we can proceed with the international criminal prosecutions that we want to see, they will eventually face justice in the way that those who participated in massacres in Bosnia faced justice in the past. And I hope, Mr. Speaker, that will have a chilling effect on their current appalling conduct.
Nick Smith.
Mr. Speaker, every week examples emerge of government waste during COVID. And last year, the former Health Secretary told me that there'd be no profiteering and no cronyism. Does the Prime Minister still agree with him?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I think that a lot of people made money, I'm sad to say, out of COVID in a way that perhaps they shouldn't have done. And we deplore that, and we are trying to recoup as much as we possibly can. But I would just remind him of the constant clamour from those benches and around the country for us to equip our country with PPE, with medicines as fast as possible. And that we did, Mr. Speaker.
Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Would the Prime Minister join me in thanking the brilliant staff and volunteers at Watford General Hospital for their tireless work for our community over many years? And would he agree with me that we should get started as soon as possible on the ambitious plans put forward by West Herts Hospital Trust as part of the new hospital programme to transform healthcare across our whole community so staff and patients can access world-class health services in facilities fit for the 21st century? And Mr Speaker, if I may add, the ambitious plans are truly shovel-ready. I will gladly go and buy a shovel today to get started.
Mr. Speaker, he is a fantastic champion for Watford, and he's been. I know that because I've been to see him several times. He's been campaigning on this issue to get a hospital in Watford ever since he was triumphantly elected, and he's going to be successful because there will be a new hospital scheme in his local area, and it's part of our plan to deliver 48 new hospitals in this country by 2030, Mr. Speaker.
Thompson. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister's fundamental political problem at the moment isn't about parties or fixed penalty notices or cake. It's about the lack of trust, integrity and credibility at the heart of government, which he himself now personifies. Mr. Speaker, when is the Prime Minister going to realise that people don't want to hear any more glib, half-hearted non-apologies or hear him witter on about getting on with the job? They just want this Pinocchio Prime Minister to pack his bags and go.
Mr. Speaker, I think when are the Scottish people going to hear any... sorry, Mr. Speaker, when are the Scottish people going to hear an ounce of sense from the Scottish National
Prime Minister, we both can't stand up at the same time. I'm trying to be helpful. We've got to be more moderate in taunting language use. Pinocchio is not acceptable. I'm sure the member wishes to withdraw it quickly.
Mr. Speaker, I withdraw that, but he packs his bags and goes.
Prime Minister.
It's not a withdrawal.
Withdrawn it. Sorry, you've withdrawn it. You're with it. Let's get on. Prime Minister, withdraw. Is that are you answering anything?
Sorry, I don't know what his question is, Mr. Speaker. He's withdrawn it, but the answer is that we're going to get on the job. Get on with the job. It'd be nice to hear an ounce of sense from the Scottish Nationalist Party or some competent government.
Rhys Villiers.
The London Borough of Barnes is surrounded by Labour councils, all of which have higher council tax and have abandoned weekly bin collections. So will the Prime Minister urge everyone to come out on the 5th of May and vote Conservative in order to keep council tax lower than Labour and to protect our weekly bin collections?
Quite right, Mr. Speaker. Conservative councils fix 4 times more potholes, recycle twice as much, and Conservative councils, Mr. Speaker, charge less.
Tom Hopkins.
Mr. Speaker, the Ministerial Code states that ministers have a duty to comply with the law and to protect the integrity of public life. The Prime Minister has broken the law and repeatedly shown contempt for the British public. Conservative MPs opposite seem content to decry the principles of honesty and integrity as they unashamedly defend him. The public want him gone, we want him gone. When will he do the right thing and resign?
Mr. Speaker, I know why they want me gone, because this government is going to get on. We are going to get on and show why this Conservative government is going to deliver for the British people, fixing our cost of living issues, making sure that we solve our long-term energy problems, and delivering on everything that we promised to do, Mr. Speaker. And they have absolutely no plan. That's the difference.
David Evan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. On these benches, we were elected to make the most of our Brexit freedoms, including they don't like it, Mr. Speaker, they don't like it, but including tackling immigration, illegal immigration, securing our borders and crack down on the evil people smuggling trade. Does my right honourable friend agree that our groundbreaking partnership with Rwanda will do just that?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, I think it is a part of the solution. and it's something that, as I said just now, was advocated in 2004 by the then Home Secretary David Blunkett, a Blairite Home Secretary. It's now attacked in the most ludicrous terms by the current Labour opposition, who are obviously, as I just said, Corbynistas in Islington suits.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wondered what the Prime Minister makes of this quote. When a regime has been in power too long, when it has fatally exhausted the patience of the people, and when oblivion finally beckons, across the world, you can rely on leaders of that regime to act solely in the interests of self-preservation and not in the interests of the electorate. His words, Mr. Speaker, Daily Telegraph, 28th of February 2011. Does he still agree? Yes or no?
Mr. Speaker, all I can say is that I'm delighted that she's a reader of the Daily Telegraph. I think what she needs to do is keep going to the end of the article. That's my advice to her.
What is it now? What are we going to now? We now come to the 10-minute rule bill.
Barry Sherman, please.
Let's just let the room clear. Just.
Welcome back. PMQ panel, John Cryer, Labour MP, and Peter Bone, Conservative MP. Your best bit, Peter?
Well, the best bit, I'm not there, and I've got invited to a meeting with the Secretary of State for Health. Absolutely important thing about the hospital. Philip Hollowbone drove it home, and we got what we wanted there. I thought the most important questions were the ones on Ukraine. I think the war in Europe trumps everything, and there were some very serious questions in there on that, which the Prime Minister gave a proper serious reply to.
John, standout moment or moments for you?
There were a couple. I thought Keir Starmer's opening line on I've forgotten her name, the former press secretary at Number 10.
Oh, Allegra Stratton.
Allegra Stratton, on Allegra Stratton's resignation and why she resigned and why the Prime Minister hasn't. I thought that was a pretty good opening line, better than mine, by the way that I came up with. But secondly, there must have been 3 questions. We keep mentioning this. There must have been 3 questions about hospitals and about funding. Now, there's something pretty serious going on, and it's difficult to see exactly what it is, but this money's not coming through for the new hospitals, for the much-vaunted new hospitals that have been promised for, I don't know, 3-4 years, something like that. The money's not coming through to my local hospital, my local trust. It's not coming through to, clearly, a number of other trusts in the country. And actually, perhaps in the coming weeks, that's going to become a story, because it's clearly building up.
And I thought it was really interesting that you two both mentioned that there's this blockage of the cash coming to your hospitals, and thank you for raising it, because it's something that we'll look at.
It's Treasury. It will go down to be the Treasury. It won't be the Health Department.
No.
It'll be and that's someone who's got to sort of put the stick in. We promised it, give them the money.
Yeah. Rishi, you can have a word with Rishi Sunak?
Well, maybe me talking to him won't help, but if his friend next door has a chat with him, the Prime Minister, we might get somewhere.
Good. I'll tell you a line that I thought was interesting, and I'm interested in whether you think it will work. Boris Johnson accused the Labour leader Keir Starmer of being a Corbynista in an Islington suit. Did that do it for you, John?
What, has it got resonance?
Yeah.
I don't think it has resonance out there, no. No, I don't think it's got any resonance. I think things have moved on.
Don't even know what it meant.
Eh?
I didn't even know what he meant. I mean, that's the sort of lines you get at PMQs which are irrelevant to most of the country. And somebody in the PM's preparation thought this was a good thing to say. And the leader of it had the same thing. I think it's much better when the guys just say what they think. And that's why some of the questions later on, when they haven't got notice or haven't worked out what they're going to get, actually get better answers.
Yeah, particularly Philip Hollowbone, because it's the same hospital.
Yeah.
That was a good question. I mean, we all know this happens. You know, I've been in meetings where you're planning, when we were in government, where you're planning what the Chancellor or whoever it happens to be is going to say, and very often in those little meetings where there's 3 or 4 of you, somebody will come up with a line, and in the privacy of that meeting, it sounds brilliant. When you get out there and you've got 400-500 MPs behind you and in front of you, suddenly it all crumbles. And with that particular line that the Prime Minister used, I just can't see it having resonance out there.
No. You won't be using it on your doorstep, Peter.
No, but by the way, whenever I have a question to the PM, I never tell him what I'm going to ask. Because then you
do, and what you're
and he reads the answer out, doesn't he?
Because you're giving our viewers an insight, which we all know, but they don't necessarily. They don't want to give the Prime Minister to be caught off guard, so they tip him off in advance.
Don't do it. Tell him, if you give the Prime Minister the question he doesn't know, he's more likely to say what he thinks, not what some advisor thinks he should be saying. And I would, all my colleagues, unless it's something very technical to do with a particular area, you shouldn't tell the PM. He should stand up and have to listen to what you're going to say and think, and then you get a much better answer.
By the way, it would have happened under Labour as well. That's many decades ago when Labour was in government.
Oh, it used to happen all. When we came up, when I was first elected in 1997, you know, we had that majority of 180. And the number of planted, there were every day there was this avalanche of planted questions. And the problem, if you put a planted question in your own voice, so it sounds a bit more sort of spontaneous and relaxed and natural, you can get away with it. But if you just read it out in the way that it's been, it becomes very clear to people in there, but also people out in the country, that you're not asking your own question. By the way, there is one exception to not notifying. I mean, I've never notified people of what I'm going to ask. The one exception to that I find is business questions, where you're asking for a debate on a Thursday morning, because there the leader of the House can say anything he or she likes, actually. And I've found with a few leaders on our side and on the Tory side, you actually get a more substantive answer. Because you're talking about business, and I've asked about our hospital quite a few times about various other issues. But on the other policy questions, then I think Peter's probably right that you don't get much of an answer if you give a warning, because all the Secretary of State or the Prime Minister is going to do is churn out a load of statistics that make the government look good, and that doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah. I thought the Prime Minister was pretty strong on the government's plan to send some asylum seekers to Rwanda. And I think, John, I'm going to put this to you, actually. I think the line that he is able to use, that Labour, David Blunkett, passed laws when you were last in government, which allowed the deportation of asylum seekers, I think that's quite tricky for the current front bench.
No, I don't think. I mean, David changed a lot of legislation actually, but that allows deportation only under certain circumstances. With what we're talking about with this Rwanda plan, I mean, I think it's window dressing because the government's in difficulty, and I was in for this. I didn't get called, but I was in for the statement by the Home Secretary yesterday. And she wasn't able to provide proper costings. Right. She wasn't able to provide figures. She wasn't even able to say which sort of asylum seekers would go to Rwanda and which wouldn't, but it might include children, which I think is pretty unacceptable to most of the country, perhaps 90-odd% of the country. On all these issues, she wasn't able to provide any real information to a series of questions, both from our side and from her own side. And actually, I noticed there were quite a few normally loyal Conservative MPs who clearly, and I can think of a few straight away, who were clearly very uneasy about this plan, and they were saying, well, we can understand the rationale. On the other hand, can the Home Secretary tell me this, this and this? And on almost every occasion, in fact, probably on every occasion, she couldn't provide that information.
Peter, defend Priti Patel.
Oh, well, I'm actually happy to. I mean, I spent a long time, as you know, as chairman of the all-party group against human trafficking. What we're looking at, by the way, isn't human trafficking, it's people smuggling, but it's the same evil gangs that do this. And what you've got to do, the only way you'll stop it is break the demand for it. So if you're in France, why would you give £10,000 to someone to take you across the channel if you might finish up in Africa? Now, if that message gets through, and if you don't qualify exactly who's going to go there, and people that therefore think they may finish up in Africa, in Rwanda, they're not going to pay the money because they're in a safe country in France. They're coming across here for economic reasons. It is absolutely, I believe, morally right. If it's successful, there won't be thousands of people sent to Rwanda because it's worked. The question is, people absolutely have to believe that that's what's going to happen, because if they do that, we'll dry it up. And this is about the moral issue. You do not want people crossing the channel and dying, or in the backs of lorries suffocating. These are evil gangs. They're the worst people in society, and anything we can do to stop that, or try to stop it, and it might fail, but if we try it, it's the right thing to do, in my view.
What, do you want me to?
If you want, you're very welcome.
There's no evidence that it will deter these people, smugglers, who are some of the most abhorrent criminals in British and French society, and anywhere else for that matter. There's no evidence that it will. The senior civil servant, the permanent secretary of the Home Office, has his doubts, as does the previous permanent secretary at the Home Office. I mean, you know, it's not rocket science. One thing that Priti Patel should be doing, this may be beyond her control. In the first years after David Cameron became Prime Minister, we saw cuts at the Home Office, every section of about 30%. Some sections it was 50%. And I've found, having been an MP for quite a long time now, that getting answers out of the Home Office has become, it's like blood out of a stone since those cuts went through. If we were processing asylum applications and other migration applications properly, as we were doing beyond 12 years ago, we wouldn't have the problems on the same scale. You're always going to get problems associated with migration. We wouldn't have the migration problems on the same scale. On economic migration, another policy which has never really been implemented, but was after the war in the 1940s, when you had big movements of people across Europe, was equality in terms and conditions and pay in employment. In the mines, for instance, in the 1940s and early 50s, there were an awful lot of miners from Poland, Italy, from Eastern Europe, elsewhere. They were given exactly the same training, terms, conditions, pay. And it removed migration as an issue, which it had been prior to that. We've never really done that. We didn't address that while we were in office, and this government certainly hasn't addressed it.
OK. I'm going to change the subject a bit. So lots of the Labour leader led on this. Lots of his MPs also talked about Partygate. The SNP also talked about Partygate. Obviously, it will be massive tomorrow in the House of Commons. It was massive yesterday in the House of Commons. And I want to ask you about yesterday, Peter, because you were in the chamber before the Prime Minister's statement. You asked him a question on it. How did it feel to hear one of your colleagues, Mark Harper, former Chief Whip, say that he wasn't worthy, that Prime Minister is not worthy of the office? How uncomfortable is that for somebody hearing one of their own side say that?
Well, actually, from a parliamentary point of view, I think it's great, because we've got people, MPs, who can stand up, look at their leader and say, you know, good, you've got to go. And there's not a lot of countries where you can actually do that. I can't think of... I actually think the parliamentary system is working. We've got this huge debate tomorrow. I disagree with Mark, and some people will say it's his leadership bit. Well, but every member has the right to make their mind up and say what they want. I mean, you know, I think you vote Brexit. Wasn't in line with your party, and I mean, imagine trying to do that in some countries. Clearly, in totalitarian things, you'd have probably been, you know, escorted to prison after that. So that's the great thing. Now, disagree with Mark, but absolutely defend his right to say it, and that's good.
I think that's a really good answer. I don't think you'd find anybody in either of the Whip's office echoing it. No.
Yeah. Never been a fan. The Whips have never been a fan of mine.
That's why we love you on the show. Now, speaking again of tomorrow, the Prime Minister is this afternoon going to India on a trade mission. He will be in India tomorrow while that vote is taking place. Is it sensible for him to still go?
Well, I think he's putting the country's needs first. There will be one less Conservative in the lobby because he'll be in India. I think he's doing the right thing. To be honest, I don't think there's anything more the Prime Minister can say. It is up to the Commons to make the one decision as whether they think the Prime Minister deliberately lied. If they think he deliberately lied, then they must refer him to the Privileges Committee. If you don't think that, then you have to vote the other way. And I will listen with great interest on the debate. I have my own view that the timing of this was wrong, that it was prejudged, and it's actually been done because there's local elections going on, which I think was a mistake from the opposition. But we'll see. I won't decide how to vote, obviously, until I've heard the debate. But at the moment, I think the Prime Minister has my 100% support.
We've talked about your best bits of PMQs. We're just going to have a recap of some of those key moments.
So, Mr. Speaker, yesterday's apology lasted for as long as the Prime Minister thought necessary to be clipped for the news. But once the cameras were off, the Prime Minister went to see his backbenchers, and he was back to blaming everyone else. He even said that the Archbishop of Canterbury had not been critical enough of Putin. In fact, the Archbishop called Putin's war an act of great evil, and the Church of England has led the way in providing refuge to those fleeing. Would the Prime Minister like to take this opportunity to apologise for slandering the Archbishop and the Church of England?
Mr. Speaker, I think the right honourable gentleman. I was slightly taken aback to be Sorry, Mr. Speaker. I was slightly taken aback for the government to be criticised over the policy that we have devised to end the deaths at sea in the Channel as a result of cruel criminal gangs. I was surprised that we were attacked for that. And actually, Mr. Speaker, it turns out that policy, do you know who proposed that policy, first of all, in 2004? It was David Blunkett, Mr. Speaker, who said it was a 21st century solution to the problems of illegal asylum seeking and immigration. He should stick with, he's a Corbynister in a smart Islington suit. That's the truth.
And we've already chatted about some of those lines, but one thing I haven't asked you both. John, should the church stay out of politics?
No, I don't think you can. I mean, look, I believe in the way that the British Constitution is made up and governed. There's got to be a division, and I will never express religious views while I'm an MP. I might once I'm not an MP, but certainly not while I'm an MP, because you've got to have some sort of separation. But the notion that the church can stay out of politics when you've got how many bishops sit in the House of Lords? 20.
That's a good point.
I mean, you can't insist that the church stays out of the political arena when they've got people sitting in the legislature. Now, maybe that's what needs to change. Well, I think it does need changing. We should have a disestablishment of the Church of England. Although, having said that, that's not something that I get loads and loads of emails about or people coming to see me. You know, it's not an urgent issue.
Probably the final bit to you. Should the church stay out of politics? John says no, they can't.
They've always been involved in politics from the days of Jesus Christ. So,
Thomas à Becket.
I mean, the truth of the matter is they're involved in it, but doesn't mean they're always right. Now, I'm a Christian, Church of England. I think the Archbishop of Canterbury is wrong. I don't think, for instance, you can be a Christian and support the government's policy on immigration. You can be a Christian and oppose it. So I just think on this he got it wrong. I don't think he understood. But to say, I mean, he's part of Parliament. He can stand up in the Lords and say what he likes.
Yeah, he's a member.
I've really enjoyed both of your company, the company of both of you, even. I'll try and get my grammar right. I hope you come back. It's just been very courteous, interesting, no party lines being necessarily stuck to. You said what you think. It's what makes great television, and I think it's what encourages the public to have a bit more time for our politicians. Thank you both, Peter Byrne and John Cryer. You've been watching Prime Minister's Questions live with me, Gloria Di Piero. I will be back tomorrow at noon. I hope you join me. Up next, it's On the Money with Liam Halligan. But first, it is time for your weather.
Hello, I'm Luke Mile with your forecast, and we've got plenty of fine and sunny weather to come over the next few days, and for this time of year still fairly warm as well. Now the reason for that is we've got high pressure centred just over Scandinavia, but it's still close enough to the UK, keeping these weather fronts out in the Atlantic at bay, and there's very little wind across the chart at the moment as well, with those isobars spread out, so lots of fine and settled weather. So through the rest of Wednesday, as you can see, a lot of sunshine to come for most of us. There will be some fair weather cloud bubbling up across parts of England and Wales through the day. That may just spark 1 or 2 showers for South Wales and the southwest, but for most of us, it's set fair through the day. And temperatures could reach 20 degrees today. That's 68 Fahrenheit. Now we will see a little bit more cloud filtering in across the east coast of Scotland, low and misty cloud here as well, so a fairly grey picture to come here. But otherwise, for most of us overnight, it's set fair as well. You can see these weather fronts staying well out towards the west. So for some of us, a little bit of mist and fog forming overnight, a chilly one as well, temperatures getting down to low single figures in rural spots. Could be a touch of frost across Scotland and northern England, but that does set us up for another largely sunny day through Thursday. Fair weather cloud will bubble up at times through the day, and the sunshine may be turning a bit hazier down towards the southwest. I think through the afternoon we may see a bit more cloud developing across the central part of England and Wales, but for most of us, once again, it is set fair. Those temperatures doing pretty well for the time of year, but notice that easterly breeze developing along those eastern coasts, and that is going to make it feel colder here, and we could see some low cloud drifting in at times too. More especially then as we go through Thursday night and into Friday, more of this low misty cloud pushing its way in off the North Sea. Those easterly winds strengthening, so more of us will see cloud as we head through Friday, especially across eastern and southern parts. I'll see you soon. Take care.
I'm Liam Halligan. Join me every weekday at 1 p.m. for On the Money, your daily dose of economics, business and consumer news. I've got 25 years experience covering economics and finance. We hold grown-up discussions with a host of experts who really know their stuff. We can't buy gas and store it. That was a mistake, wasn't it? I think it was a mistake.
Even you, Liam, don't have a crystal ball.
Inflation's a